Hey everyone, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are having a good day. So for today's video, I am going to give you guys a little bit of an insight in how I want the suburbs of Kayan al-Bashar to look. Also, it's going to give you a little bit of an insight in how the inner city of Kayan al-Bashar is going to look, because it's basically just take these buildings and make them prettier and grander and a lot higher. Because that's the overarching theme of Kayan al-Bashar. It just goes into the sky. But anyway, with that being said, let's get straight into today's video. Yes, Kayan al-Bashar underwent a massive style change in the last month or so, because first I had this sort of style which was a little bit lower to the ground. It was, I mean, you can see the building to the right, yeah, to the right of what we're building right now. That was the previous style, and I consider that a tall building for the previous style of Kayan al-Bashar, and now I consider that actually quite a small building. And the reason for the massive style change is, first of all, I like the new style. It's kind of like a mix of Parisian, Victorian, and then also just general Kayan al-Bashar style, because I try with the city of Kayan al-Bashar, or the suburbs, but also just in general the city of Kayan al-Bashar, to basically mix every architectural style that I've used in Kayan al-Bashar so far, because that's what a city is. It's like a cultural melting pot. You won't really get a city with just one culture group. There's always, or usually there is going to be more cultural groups coming together in a city, unless you have like a very dictatorial reign or leader and all of that shit. But yeah, Kayan al-Bashar is in my mind at least, how I have the city in my head, is like a cultural melting pot. I mean, I literally have written out 4 different cultural groups that live in the Empire of Byzantium. You bet your ass that they are all somewhat represented in Kayan al-Bashar, which is the capital of Byzantium, so at least those 4 cultural groups. And then there's also, of course, when you have trade or just open borders going on, you will eventually also get people from different nations, sometimes very far away. And this brings to mind that there was this thing with the Roman Empire, and that somebody basically humanized all the Roman emperors and their statues, and you saw just how when it comes to the Roman Empire, usually you think oh, they all look like this. Then you realize the Roman Empire was a huge economic base, so that's going to attract people from all over the world who are going to settle there. So you get this huge range of cultures, of people that come together in not just one city but in an empire. So yes, there will probably be people from, I don't know, Central Africa, maybe even from China, living in the Roman Empire. Even though whenever you think of the Roman Empire, that's usually not what you think, but that's what happens when you have trade, open borders and such. People will move. Just think of it like this: a trader going to, I don't know, Rome. If let's say this, sometimes happens. Maybe he meets a Roman woman and they settle down in Rome. And then you have a person from Asia or Central Africa that lives in Rome, even though when you stereotypically think of the Roman Empire, you usually have this sort of, I just think general idea of how a Roman person would look like. But then you realize, oh, people have been people throughout time. People have been moving throughout time. So who knows how big the range was of different people and different cultures living in the Roman Empire. I have gone way off topic here, because I wanted to talk about the buildings in Kayan al-Bashar and how Kayan al-Bashar is a cultural melting pot, and then I started talking about the Roman Empire. Although Byzantium does kind of take cues from the Roman Empire. I mean, it's somewhat based off the Byzantine Empire. And yes, I really thought I was clever with Byzantine Empire. when I then quickly realized you just have to cut off by, and then you have Azantium. Well, not completely, you have to also remove the A in front of Azantium, but yeah, I thought I was really clever with that name. I wasn't. And I only realized a week later, like, oh, I just got off a few letters. But yeah, so Kayan al-Bashar, cultural melting pot, so I want to make sure that like people are going to somewhat show their culture, their background, and just their peopleness or humanness through where they are living. Even if you just have a small tiny apartment, you can usually pick out a few things of like, that's sort of specific to you. That's not a very generic item. Like that's maybe has some emotional meaning or cultural meaning to you. Like there's usually like a handful of things that you can pick out in any room and you can like, oh, that's from that person. And it's even with a small apartment where I can't, or small apartment. Yeah, this building is like small apartments. Like no person owns this entire building. At least that's what I think, because it's the suburbs of Kayan al-Bashar, so this is like middle ground, lower middle ground, like on the economic scale when it comes to how wealthy these people are. This is just like, this is your general Kayan al-Bashar person. When you get to the inner city, then you will just see all of the marble and stonework. And I'm now also really sad that we don't have any human-looking statues in Planet Zoo, because I really love the other statues, but those are also almost the only ones I can use. I like the golden llama. I can't really use it anyway, because it's very, So there's like I want to have like statues on the facade of a building, but I can't. I only have the otter statue and maybe the penguin and seal statue. But yeah, when it comes to the buildings of Kayan al-Bashar, because I'm going on so many different tangents today, which is somewhat hilarious for me, but when it comes to the buildings of Kayan al-Bashar, basically, because Kayan al-Bashar, like the map, like the save file or the zoo file, the map is kind of getting full. So I have to go higher to make it still feel like a bustling city. Even though I do kind of consider that like what you're seeing in the file or in the Planet Zoo map is kind of like scrunched up in a way. It's Kayan al-Bashar in my mind is a lot bigger than Planet Zoo allows me to build, basically. Why did I get the... Wait, actually I don't think you guys can hear that. But anyways, so yeah, Kayan al-Bashar changed dramatically over the last month when it comes to building style, because I went for this more Parisian, Victorian, sort of blended architectural look, also incorporating, of course, the Kayan al-Bashar styles, which by this point, I can never really say how many architectural styles I have been using in Kayan al-Bashar. Like, the last build was Ethiopian, but then I also used, I think, sort of like Central, Northwestern African architectural styles. Then I also used Kurdish. I used Southern Spain, which is, I think, Berber. I don't know for sure, but then I also used Moroccan and just general Arabian styles. Kurdish, a little bit of Iran, but not that much. Iraq, Turkish, Greek, Roman. Yeah, Kayan al-Bashar, it kind of works that it's a cultural melting pot because there's so many different styles in Kayan al-Bashar. And then, yeah, that's basically it. I wanted to go higher because it's necessary if I want to have like a city feel, because with the smaller buildings, it can still work, but I really want to give this feel of like this is kind of like the New York City of my fantasy world. Like, it's bustling, it's like feeling a little bit cramped with like how many people are living there in kind of a small area. So to get that feeling, and also a slightly claustrophobic feeling, because I want the like streets to really feel like you're tiny compared to the actual buildings. To get that feel, yes, I needed to go higher. And also, building these houses is in a way a lot easier as well than the former style of Kayan al-Bashar, which was, I would say, a lot more decorated. It was a lot more like bump outs here and there. I'm still doing that, but I want a lot more like a sort of, not clean, but a more like, I don't know, like, so how do I explain this? I don't know. I just want a style that is slightly less in your face, but then it's in your face by how high it is and how it's a little bit like, it's a little bit more of a demure style. I can't explain this. Like, here's the thing why I am awful teacher and nobody should ever ask me questions on like, how do you build this or how do you do that. I have like a general idea of like, this is what I want to do in my head, but for me to communicate that idea is very difficult, as you might have told from this video, because I can't explain why I want this different style compared to the more like in your face and, you know, style of Kayan al-Bashar in the past. Although, here's one thing that has kind of rubbed off on me after your guys' suggestions, which is to make Kayan al-Bashar a little bit more colorful. Yes, today's buildings are all beige, but I'm building a huge high-rise which is mostly orange actually. Then I also forgot to record a building that is mostly blue. Yes, orange and blue or red and blue are probably the most featured colors. I mean, those are kind of easy also to get in nature, because here's the thing, Kayan al-Bashar, it's kind of a mix of Renaissance, but then also like Victorian times, or just, well, maybe a little bit before that, like basically when the French boulevards became a thing. Because there is a little bit of like steam power going on in Kayan al-Bashar with the recent addition of that steam airship, but I don't want to make it like a very prominent thing. It's kind of like they just discovered it, and so they're kind of just like trying it out. There's probably somebody that got blown up trying out something, because it's a Poisonblade build. Of course, some that is happening. It's kind of like they are doing this new thing, but then these buildings have been here for quite some time just because of the necessity of building higher to accommodate all of the people that are moving towards Kayan al-Bashar, because that's always the thing. The cities just have a pull on people. This has been a thing throughout time, that cities pull people from like the countryside looking for like opportunities, but then the countryside pulls people who are like trying to like settle down with a family and such. Like, there's always this push and pull between cities and the countryside. You move towards the cities when you're looking for like a economic boost or just more opportunities, and as soon as you like settle down, you usually want to go to a more like rural area, like you want to like go to the smaller towns, or you want to go to a village. That's kind of like the thing with Kayan al-Bashar. Also, because Kayan al-Bashar is in the middle of a desert, there's not a lot of towns around it, so everybody in like a certain area, like they go to Kayan al-Bashar because there's nothing else in the surroundings. Yeah, the greatest desert that I made up is a bone-dry desert, with only a few nomads going through it, and that's, well, there's also now airships going through it. So making like, when I made Kayan al-Bashar, I did not think of like where or how did this city start. And now I realize, why did this city start? Because it's in the middle of a desert. Yes, there's a little bit of like fertile lands because of the floating islands. Yes, there's resources in the mountains that it's built into, basically. But then it's also like, yes, but it's also very difficult of a place to settle. So why the fuck did people settle here? And yes, that's basically the train of thought that like I go into when I'm writing stuff down or like writing stuff out for this fantasy world. It's like, why did people settle here in the first place? There's usually like some factors, like Maybe it's a very good defensible position. Maybe there's a lot of natural resources. Maybe there's a lot of like possible agricultural land. Kayan al-Bashar doesn't really have a lot of agricultural land, like they have to do a lot to make whatever land they have somewhat positive for agriculture. There's there's actually a giant defensible position because the floating islands, like, you need to get an airship to get really a siege going, which not a lot of nations have, so Kayan al-Bashar is kind of a safe space. There is natural resources in the Mirage Mountains with, like, I don't know, rubies, sapphires, gold and such. Of course also stone, so there's building materials. But then it's also in the middle of a desert, which kind of throws things off. Also, right now I am building a gambling den, which I have named the Skinned Fox in honor of our good friend Silver, who tries to make me sing on streams, which is never going to happen. So that's not really why I named it the Skinned Fox. Like, it's not in anger or rage towards Silver, even though there is definitely some rage, because I'm not going to sing on stream. But it's also because, I mean, Kayan al-Bashar, the odds are somewhat always stacked against you, so I just imagine that, like, this gambling den, because I don't think it's a casino, it's not upscale enough basically to be a casino, it's kind of like a tavern, but then most locals use it to just gamble, so basically the main financial thing, but it's supposed to be a tavern. But I just think that all of, like, the games are in some way skewed to make you lose, or at least I think in Kayan al-Bashar they would be clever enough to, like, let you win a few games and then just completely throw the ball in your face and lose everything. Like, that's how Kayan al-Bashar goes. But yeah, I also wanted to make like a sort of sign of like a skinned fox. Again, not a little bit of rage towards Silver for trying to make me sing. It's never going to work, mate. But then I realized I can't make that. Like, at a certain point I have to realize I can't make that, not because I wouldn't try, but because I don't have the pieces to make that work. Like, make a fox spelt, how am I going to do that? I don't think I will ever be able to do that, because I don't think Frontier is ever going to put like a skinned fox in game, because Planet Zoo is all about conservation and making like good habitats for animals and not skin them. But yeah, that's it for today's video. We went on so many tangents. One of the longest was the Roman Empire for some reason. But yeah, Kayan al-Bashar, a huge style change in the past month. And it's a cultural melting pot of a lot of different people from inside and outside of the Byzantine Empire. But as I said, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, there is the like and subscribe button. There is also a notification button. But before that starts working, Silver will stop asking me to sing. So, no. But anyway, I wish all of you guys a wonderful day. Bye bye.